Hi everybody and welcome to part 1 of this drawing tutorial to draw this very gorgeous tabby cat using coloured pencils. This took me around 3 hours to draw in total, so it's quite a simple tutorial, and I've broken it down into 8 steps so it's as easy as possible for you all to follow along. And we'll jump straight in now with step 1, where we'll be drawing in the cat's eye. So I'm just rubbing out the quick sketch I did first before adding any coloured pencil. And the first colour I'm using is the Faber-Castell Burnt Ochre, which is a nice orangey brown colour. And I'm simply going back in over the lines I've just rubbed out and drawing them in with this orange colour. And I'm working really lightly to start with and concentrating on getting all the shapes that I can see in the reference photo drawn in as accurately as possible. And right now I'm not trying to get the colours accurate, I'm just using this orange colour to draw in the general shape of the eye, and then we'll layer over the top with the correct colours. So you can see now that the general shape of the eye has been sketched out, and now we'll move on to layering up the rest of the colours. And now I'm using the Caran d'Ache French Grey, which is a purpley grey colour, and I'm going to concentrate on filling in these areas of shadow towards the top of the eye. And I'm sketching really lightly and using a really sharp pencil, as there are some really tiny details that we want to make sure we're capturing. And I'm using this colour really to focus on drawing in the dark purpley shadow towards the top section of the eye. And this little section directly above the eye is quite pink, so I'm using the Caran d'Ache Burnt Sienna 10% pencil, which is quite a soft pink. And I'm just lightly sketching in this colour there, and then there's also in the inner corner of the eye this pink colour as well. And to further build up the contrast of the shadow, I'm using the Faber-Castell Prussian Blue, and I'm going over the area that we drew with the French grey pencil. I'm not filling in the whole area again, I'm more just drawing a really defined line across the top section of the eye, following the curve round. And then also sketching in the pupil of the eye in the middle, because although it looks black, we're going to first do a dark blue layer, as this helps add some depth to the drawing. And now to build up some of the colour to the eye itself, I'm starting with the Faber-Castell Brown Ochre, and I'm sketching in a really soft, light layer of this colour across pretty much the whole section of the eye. But I am making sure to avoid drawing in the reflection that you can see, and I'm just simply drawing around that for now, and we'll fill that in later. And I'm adding a bit more pressure with this same pencil towards the bottom of the eye to start adding in those darker, finer details that we can see. And just continuing to build up the colour of the eye and the details using the brown ochre pencil. Now I'm using the Faber-Castell Burnt Sienna pencil, and this is more of a darker orangey brown, and we're using this to start building up those dark oranges that we can see both in the eye and around the eye as well. So I'm starting off drawing in the corner of the eye, and I'm also paying attention at this point to the direction of the fur and making sure that I'm drawing with the pencil in the same direction. And with this colour, I'm just generally trying to build up more of the orange colour that you can see coming through in the eye in the reference photo. And the eye's starting to come together a bit more now, so I'm going to quickly draw the pupil in as dark as possible using the Faber-Castell black pencil. And what you want to try to do is not make it sort of one smooth line. I know that's really tempting to do, but if you actually look in the reference photo, you can see it's more of a jagged line almost, and the blue layer that we put down before does come through towards the edge of the black line, so try and keep that detail in if possible. Now I'm using the Faber-Castell light yellow ochre, and this is quite a vibrant yellow colour. So I'm adding this sparingly and being really light with my pencil movements. And my aim with this colour is just to start adding a bit more vibrancy to the eye to really bring it to life. And I'll do the same using the Faber-Castell terracotta pencil. Again, this is quite a vibrant colour but more of an orange. So I'll use this to really bring out the most vibrant looking orange parts of the eye. And now we'll switch back to concentrating on the shadows of the eye again, and I'm using the Faber-Castell Burnt Umber pencil. And simply just adding another layer of this darker colour to the shadowed portions of the eye. And really you'll see it start to pop out of the page as you increase the contrast between the lights and the darks of the eye. And now to do a bit of blending of everything and really bring out the highlights and reflections of the eye, I'm using the Caran d'Ache white pencil and just going over key parts of the eye to make those reflections stand out. And now the eye is basically finished. I'm just going in and adding a few more details just to really bring out the colours until I'm happy with how it's looking. So this is the Faber-Castell Caput Mortem Violet, and I'm just simply building up those darker reddy orange tones to the shadows using this one. Now I'm just adding a little bit of the Faber-Castell warm grey into the reflection, just simply so it's not pure white. And finally I'm using the Caran d'Ache Bleu de Nims pencil to add just slightly more of a contrast to these shadows. And it's up to you how much time you want to spend on the eye and how many colours, because you could spend hours switching between them and adding every tiny detail. But just have fun with it and keep going until you're happy with the result you have before moving on to the next step. Now for step 2, we're going to be concentrating on drawing the outline of the whole cat using coloured pencils and drawing in useful bits such as the fur direction. And this step is so useful to make the rest of the drawing process just that much easier. So we'll just be working section by section. I always like to start off from the top left and work my way down to the bottom right. And really the aim of this is to concentrate not on getting the colour or the shadows or highlights right. You really want to make sure that you're getting the shape of the drawing right, and then everything after that can follow. And for this step I'm only using 4 pencils and I've listed them all in the PDF drawing guide. So this should actually be a really simple, straightforward step to follow along with. So you can see that my mid-tone colour is the Faber-Castell Burnt Ochre. Then I'm using the Faber-Castell Burnt Sienna to indicate the darker sections of fur. Then the Caran d'Ache Butternut pencil is for the light highlighted sections of fur. And I'm also using the Faber-Castell Sky Blue pencil to sketch in the outline of the whitest parts of the fur. So I'm just going section by section and rubbing out the initial outline first and then filling in with these specific colours. And the main goal of this is to make it really clear in my own head where I'm going to be layering the colours in the following steps. And now I've almost finished the outline. I'm just moving on to sketching in where the white fur is and the details there. And for this, I'm actually using the Faber-Castell Warm Grey number 2 pencil. And just following the same process as before to finish off the rest of the cat's outline. Now we're going to move on to step 3 and we'll be drawing in the nose of the cat. And I'm starting off using the Faber-Castell beige red and just lightly sketching over the area of the nose. And I'm adding a little bit of the light cadmium orange Faber-Castell colour to the inner corner of the nose, but really only a tiny bit because this is a really bright coloured pencil. Now this is the Faber-Castell light cadmium red, and I'm using this to fill in the inner part of the nose and that redder portion that we can see in the reference photo. And on top of this, I'll use the Faber-Castell Caput Mortuum Violet to really build the shadow into the corner here. And I've switched back to the light cadmium red to further build up the red colour. Remember, it's much easier to continue building up more colour rather than taking it away, so it always pays to be a bit cautious and gradually build up your layers of colour. Now there is some orange in the nose as well, so I'm using the Faber-Castell Burnt Ochre to add a little hint of orange across it. And now I'm using the Caran d'Ache Herculaneum Red, which again is another pink colour, but this one's really good for blending. So I'm just going over the portion of the nose and blending up those layers of colour that we've just put down and making sure it all looks smooth and works as one together. And I'll also just take this opportunity to extend the pink colour into the fur below by adding a few lines in the direction of the fur using the Herculaneum Red. And now I'm just going to continue switching between these colours and building up the layers until I'm happy with the overall look of the nose. I'm also using a little bit of the Caran d'Ache white to blend the top section of the white fur into the nose. And as the final detail of the nose, I'm using the Herculaneum Red just to build up a slightly darker layer of colour to the very tip of it, just so it doesn't disappear into the paper. And once you finish drawing the nose, that means we've actually completed part 1 of this tutorial series, and we've still got parts 2 and 3 to go. I really hope that you're enjoying this tutorial so far and that you'll be joining me for the rest of the drawing.